Seek him who made the Pleiades and Orion, and turns deep darkness into the morning, and darkens the day into night, who calls for the waters of the sea, and pours them out upon the surface of the earth. The Lord is his name. Please remain standing, and we will join together for the saying of the Fortiter, found in your bulletin, while the candles are being lit. O gracious light, pure brightness of the ever-living Father in heaven, O Jesus Christ, holy and blessed, now as we come to the setting of the sun, and our eyes behold the vesper light, we sing thy praises, O God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Thou art worthy at all times to be praised by happy voices, O Son of God, O Giver of life, and to be glorified through all the worlds. Please be seated.
A reading from the first book of Chronicles. King David said further to his son Solomon, "Be strong and of good courage, and do the work. Do not be afraid or dismayed, for the Lord God, my God, is with you. God will not fail you or forsake you until all the work of the service of the house of the Lord is finished." The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Please join me in reading Psalm 15, found in your bulletin. We will read the psalm with seniors in reading the odd verses with me, and everyone else reading the even verses. We will begin with the seniors. Lord, who may dwell in your tabernacle, who may abide upon your holy hill.
Those who lead blameless lives and do what is right, who speak truthfully from the heart.
There is no guile upon their tongues. They do no evil to their friends. They do not heap contempt upon their neighbors.
In their sight, the wicked are rejected, but they honor those who fear the Lord.
They do not give their money in hope of gain, nor do they take a bribe against the innocent.
Whoever does these things shall never be overthrown.
A reading from the letter to the Hebrews. Do not, therefore, abandon that confidence of yours. It brings a great reward. For you need endurance, so that when you have done the will of God, you may receive what was promised. For yet in a very little while, the one who is coming will come and will not delay. But my righteous one will live by faith. My soul takes no pleasure in anyone who shrinks back, but we are not among those who shrink back and so are lost, but among those who have faith and so are saved. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. Good evening. 6 years ago, this, our final Vespers of the year, got a new name. The name came to us through a story of alumnus Bo Wilson of the class of 1972. Bo shared his story with us that night, recalling a life-threatening accident that left him injured and struggling with recovery. He found in those moments when he was at his weakest that 3 words kept coming to his mind: Fortiter, Fideliter, Feliciter, the Latin motto of our school, which can translate to bravely, faithfully, and happily. Years after his recovery and after the East Coast earthquake of 2011, Bo was on campus and he noticed the damage caused by the quake to the seal on the front of Pendleton. Seeing the seal of this place and the words of the motto, he wanted to bring healing and repair to that seal in the same way he believed this school served as a healing force for him and for others. From Bo's story, the idea was born to make tonight a celebration of not just the blessings of this great school, but also how we can celebrate that Episcopal can be a blessing to each of us, and that each of us can go out into the world and be a blessing for others. Now, every year, we invite a younger member of the alumni, right, Mr. Lee, and a graduating senior to reflect on this idea, to share the impact that Episcopal has made on all our lives. You will hear talk of bravery and finding your voice. You will see the struggle to be faithful to oneself and how happiness can be experienced and found. This evening, our speakers are the Lees, Debbie and Jonathan, two individuals who might represent the largest height disparity between two speakers in the school's history, but whose stories are lived large, with passion and heart. Mr. Jonathan Lee came to Episcopal as a freshman in the fall of 1997. During his time at EHS, Mr. Lee was a lot of alls. He was all IAC in basketball and all state in track. He captained both the cross-country and track teams and served as a senior monitor and a member of the honor committee. Mr. Lee went on to college at William & Mary, where he graduated with a degree in government. Before he returned to Episcopal for a full-time work in admissions and as a ninth grade dean and dorm head, Mr. Lee was a project manager in the Veterans Affairs Office and in the Department of Defense, all while coaching here at Episcopal the whole time. He and his wife Lauren and their two children, Grayson and Vivian, will be relocating to Seattle this summer, where Mr. Lee will serve as Dean of Students at the Seattle Academy of the Arts and Sciences. But first, we will hear from Debby Lee, a member of the class of 2021, who hails from Lexington, Kentucky. Debbie came to Episcopal 4 years ago as a freshman. She has lived her entire life on Robertson Hall between Anderson and Harrison. She served as a prefect last year, and as a senior monitor this year. She hosts a podcast called Hyphenated. Although she may be small in stature, Debbie works to live her life big and bold, and she will share how and why she does this with us tonight. Between their talks, seniors Chris Kim, Helen Chen, and junior Yo-Yo Wang will perform Serenade in C Major, Opus 10 by Ernst von Dochnani. So let's begin, and join me in welcoming Debby Lee to the pulpit.
Good evening. I first learned about language barriers when I moved to the U.S. at age 4. I addressed myself in a new name of my own choosing, Debbie, a typical American name, as my parents believed the assimilation would ease the transition from Seoul, South Korea, to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But their efforts didn't mean that I could understand or speak English. From daycare to kindergarten, each word I spoke would squeeze out of my eyes as tears instead of leaving my mouth. Or they would squeeze out through the tiny spots of blood that dotted my fingers, the result of a newly acquired habit of tearing up my cuticles in anxious discomfort. But the resolution to this Korean to English language barrier was relatively simple. I learned English within the span of a year or two, and I became fluent in reading body language, making me adept at picking up social cues. By the time I moved to Kentucky at age 6, I had mastered English. But it was getting harder to express myself, not easier. Each new environment came with its own foreign language that I could only mimic and not fully understand, and new language barriers surrounded me. One of those barriers was in Wilmore, a small town of 5,000 in Kentucky. It was 95% white, which left me as one of very few Asian students in my grade. I found myself subjected to a barrage of stereotypes served up on TV or in movies, ranging from a quiet nerd to socially inept. Though trivial, I found myself internalizing them all throughout elementary school as I began to think that my worth derived from the fact that I was a know-it-all, that I had no friends, that I was quiet, that I was seen as weird and poked fun at by my peers. I had a voice, unlike before, but it spoke a language that was projected onto me as I accepted that others' perceptions of me was a role I was destined to play. Once I made it to Episcopal, I was determined to free myself from the limited expectations that was restraining my voice back home. In a literal sense, I worked to be louder. I laughed a little harder, I yelled in the dining hall, and over-exaggerated my actions. Freshman year, my goal was to not only challenge the notion within my mind that I was supposed to be quiet, but to challenge the world's idea that I wasn't allowed to take up space as myself. If I was louder, I wouldn't be Asian, I wouldn't be something silenced or cast aside. But the burst of confidence and energy didn't last long, and my attempts to translate myself into this new world at Episcopal weren't smooth or clean. Another language barrier greeted me then, one consisting of the vocabulary of summer homes and wealthy family legacies that I didn't speak. And I found myself facing two barriers at once, the socioeconomic one compounding with the racial one. A gradual accumulation of microaggressions built up. It began with something as small as people not saying hello to me in the hallways when I said hello. I grew self-conscious of the color of my skin and the price tags that labeled my clothes and how they differ from those who didn't greet me in return. Maybe that was why. I grew aware of the fact that people did not want to associate with me in public spaces, and I began to internalize this feeling of inferiority. I chose not to talk to anyone first or on campus anymore, and instead I allowed people to decide whether or not they wanted to associate my name with theirs. I wasn't an equal to anyone in my mind. This hyper-awareness of others' perceptions paralyzed me both inside and outside the classroom. If I spoke up in class, I was further encasing myself within the typical Asian stereotype. But the same stood for me if I remained quiet. If I allowed myself to be enthusiastic, energetic, or overly engaged, I was nerdy. But if I wasn't enthusiastic enough, I was antisocial. The paradox I had created was choking my voice out of existence. What was I supposed to be if there was no gray space in between the black and white definitives? This cage of worthlessness formed yet another language barrier, and as time passed, I found that it accompanied me to justify the various experiences that I faced to myself. I convinced myself that I was allowed to be taken advantage of as people came to me for help in a private setting but refused to look at me in passing outside. I was allowed to be stared at, I was allowed to stand out in social settings, I was allowed to be excluded from the EHS community. I was allowed to be in a room that prevented me from getting more than 4 hours of sleep a day for a year because I didn't deserve the right to sleep or a space to call my own. It made sense to me now as to why I wandered around dorm at 2 a.m. in the mornings and ended up asleep on the common room couch. I wasn't equal to anyone. I didn't deserve anything. No self-advocacy could happen without my voice, which I found that I no longer had for myself. A resolution to these language barriers didn't come as naturally or as simply as the first did back when I was 4. I didn't suddenly pick up on the language of the majority at EHS or feel secure in my self-worth immediately. But the barriers began to crumble when I found a direction in my life. I realized that I had a passion for helping people and for activism. Slowly, I began to pick up on a language of my own, beyond the barriers that I was facing as I attended a protest, then 2, then 3, and joined like-minded people. I began to speak of justice and kindness as I pieced together my own vocabulary. Being a voice for the marginalized gave me a voice of my own. Topics like race, gender, class, equity, and inclusion filled me with purpose and drive. This language allowed me to begin to step beyond the internalized projections of who I thought I was, who I believed Debbie needed to be, and I began to speak my own truth. And though I haven't arrived at a clear destination of truly knowing who I am, I know that I'm headed in the right direction. Here, within the context of my story, voice to me means identity. Being able to literally and figuratively express yourself in ways you find authentic and comfortable. In that way, we all face language barriers, environments, people, and situations that act as obstacles to an acceptance of who we are. Sometimes, because of these barriers, we find that we don't know what to say or how to say what we would like. Sometimes, we have the voices of others superimposed on us, the voices that other people expect us to have and to hear from us. Sometimes, you won't be heard, despite your efforts to be. But in those moments are when you remember, what is lost when we choose or are forced to make ourselves small, when we diminish our voices for the sake of acquiescing to others? What is to make of the U-shaped hole in the universe, the missing talents, passions, and goals, no matter how big or small? Today marks the remaining 2-week stretch into a summer break that will mark our departure to college or whatever is next for us seniors. It also marks the departure to the next year as a sophomore, junior, or senior at Episcopal. While it can seem all too daunting, it is imperative to remember that each one of you here is a person worth being and deserves a life worth living. So no matter where you are in your journey with yourself and your identity, seek to find your language. Ask yourself, what makes you who you are? What makes you happy, and what do you seek to do with your life? As we reflect on our school motto, Fortiter, Fideliter, Feliciter, I implore you to find and strengthen the Fortiter within, to stand as yourself with Fideliter and Feliciter, to exist purely and wholly as yourself, to take up space. Walk down the road of self-discovery with bravery, faith, and joy. And as you take each step, know that you have one voice, a voice that is worth being heard, a voice that is capable of speaking your truth, of helping those in need, and fighting for what you believe in. Thank you, and God bless the high school.
Hello. I would first like to just say, Debbie, thank you so much for that chapel talk. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and talk about something like that. And just to let you know, as you become a graduate, you're certainly my equal as well as a graduate of Episcopal High School, so thank you. And same to all you seniors as well. Bravely, faithfully, happily. Who interviewed you? To many of you that know me, this statement can be heard resonating on the boys' dorm after a senior slip and slide on the third floor Hummel bathroom just after a mass meeting. Who interviewed you? Late night shenanigans in the dorm rooms. Who interviewed you? A horrible, poorly timed joke, maybe by Jackson Bauer. Who interviewed you? Or a classic late night debate in the comments. Who interviewed you? So I ask you that question now. Who actually interviewed you? Well, in the spring of 1997, my dad and I drove a long driveway. There were trees perfectly spaced apart on the right and left side of the car as we drove up. The grass was perfectly green, greener than any grass I'd ever seen before. As we reached the top of this hill, there was a white house with 4 columns. And beside each of the columns of the building was 2 identical columns as well, buildings. My dad made a right turn, and we parked our car in front of the admissions building. Before my foot could touch the ground, a red-headed man in a seersucker suit came out and said, "Hey, y'all must be the Lees." He said, "I'd like to welcome you all to EHS. Y'all come on into my office now." From that moment, the rest is history. That admissions officer gave my family and myself a tour that only someone that can clearly love Episcopal could do. That gentleman was named Bill Ellis. Bravely. I ask that you now close your eyes and complete a reflection with me. Go back to the day that you interviewed and think about your desires to be at Episcopal High School. Now open your eyes. I know what it's like to sneak a nap in chapel a time or two here. I would say that many of you were brave in your desires to be here. I say that collectively, each one of you were young, excited, pumped, geeked, amazed, and ready. I believe this is not just for the students, but for the faculty as well. You were excited to meet new friends, embark on new journeys, and leave the safety of your homes. Faithfully, the 2020-2021 school year has been tough. Our community has dealt with COVID protocols, COVID testing, COVID contract tracing, COVID restrictions, COVID sports, and COVID scares. In the past, I will be participating in video games on dorm, particularly NBA 2K and Broadcast View. Of course, there are many haters that will hate on that view. You know who you are. Watching the Carolina Duke game and bravely inviting UNC fans into my house. Watching my kids learn sports for many of you. The amazing date nights with my wife and having one of the amazing and awesome babysitters watch my kids. And my favorite, witnessing 9th grade boys learn about co-ed visitation on Hummel dorm. While this is clearly not a fair trade, it is my job. Well, actually, it's our job to faithfully perform our duties as an advisor, coach, dorm head, faculty member, mentor, friend. We must arise to the occasion each and every day. Happily, when you all said yes to EHS, all paths pointed to learning and growing in a 100% boarding school environment. I would like to tell you that there is so much more to this journey than graduation. To the freshmen, you have just started this journey here at EHS. Your time started with COVID, but you have 3 more years to continue a happy and bright legacy here. To the sophomores, you are reaching the halfway point here at EHS, and you will soon no longer be underclassmen. To the juniors, be careful what you wish for. The faculty will happily provide you with responsibilities. I'd like to take a pause here and state that for me, my journey ends here. It started 24 years ago. I came in as a lanky, skinny, 14-year-old, 140-pound boy. To the amazing community of faculty and staff that are still here today that started with me, I'd like to say thank you. I know that your love and that everything you're doing for me now and in the past is the reason why I stand here today as part of this community. I leave here now, well, as a skinny, lanky, slightly heavier man. I have happily greeted each and every one of you that have crossed my path. I do not do so for your attention, but to let you know you have heard, seen, and loved. Please know that I will never be further away from you than a text message or a phone call. The relationship here at EHS are special. This year may not be a year that it leaves the most positive feeling was inside you, but I ask that you please stop and rethink that bitterness. EHS is a place that seeks to do so much more than provide you with moral and intellectual courage that leads to courageous actions. EHS is a place where you live, laugh, cry, compete, hang out, and eventually learn. We do all these things together as a community with similarities and also differences. There is not a better sign of community for the fact that each and every teacher signs your diploma as a graduating senior. And to the seniors, you have made it. Congratulations. If you should remain in good standing here over the next 2 weeks, I emphasize that to you all, you will join me and many others as a graduate of Episcopal High School. I am so proud to technically be leaving with this class that I started my official time here as a faculty member. To the community of Episcopal, I ask that you bravely seek out new relationships with those who cross your path. You never know just how much a hello or a hug or how are you doing means. Be brave, be bold, be beautiful. As challenges arise, never back down. It is important to find your North Star and faithfully follow it. Be willing to make a difference for something that you believe in. This should not be something that improves your day-to-day, but the lives of others. Be dedicated, be determined, be driven. Finally, live your life to the fullest. Never regret being yourself, meeting new people, and building new networks. It takes a lot of effort to be bitter and negative. Live your lives happily, knowing that you are making a difference. Be hopeful, be honest, be happy. In closing, your success going forward is a huge part of my success, our success. I bravely, successfully, and happily say, God bless you and God bless the high school.
Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not to temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. My friends, the peace of the Lord be always with you.
And also with you.
Let's share this peace with one another. Please be seated when you're finished piecing. I would like to invite up our editors of the Vespers yearbook, Vespers present on campus, seniors Rachel Marsh, Mariah Claiborne, and Sides Bell, to offer this year's yearbook dedication. We also thank Forbes Dudley for her hard work on this year's yearbook.
The recipient of this year's yearbook dedication began his service to our community long before he deposited his first paycheck from Episcopal High School. In fact, his time as an employee of the school feels very much like an extension of his time here as a student. While a student at Episcopal, Mr. Jonathan Lee ran cross country. Mr. Jonathan Lee ran cross country and played basketball, serving as captain on both teams his senior year. He returned to the school as a coach first and later as a member of the admissions team and Hummel dorm family. Senior Zeddy Williams recalls the excitement he felt seeing Coach Lee at his first cross-country practice, a familiar face and already a source of support for the new freshman. Zeddy said, "As a former runner for EHS, Mr. Lee gave me multiple tips and taught me lessons during the season that made me a better runner and person. Still to this day, he is an incredible man, and I'm extremely grateful that he has been part of the 4-year journey at Episcopal."
As a senior, Mr. Lee served as senior monitor and lived on Hummel as a leader to the freshman residents. Mr. Lee's return to the Holy Hill saw him move onto that same dorm, this year serving as dorm head. Hummel residents, like senior Edward Powers, see firsthand how much Mr. Lee cares about students, from difficult roommate conversations to prolific wing zone orders to late-night video game matchups. Edward said, "There are not enough words for me to fully explain how grateful I am for Mr. Lee. He is one of the few people I have ever met who will go above and beyond for what he believes is best for the people around him. He constantly goes the extra mile and is always smiling." During his senior year, Mr. Lee also served on the honor committee. That early commitment to integrity comes as no surprise to those who have worked with him and know how deeply he cares about doing what is right. He has worked tirelessly this year on issues of racial equity and justice as they pertain to Episcopal, serving on a faculty committee to address such issues, using his social media platforms to reconnect alumni of color with the institution, and supporting students in his role with the Black Student Association. Mr. Steve Castle said, "This to me is the essence of Jonathan, working for positive change in the school, putting the time in on a committee, having tough conversations, while at the same time highlighting the positive parts of the school. I do not know where he found the time and energy, but I'm grateful that he did."
Ultimately, the defining feature of Mr. Lee's presence on the Holy Hill is his dedication to relationships. His role in the admissions process sees him build relationships with students early on in their Episcopal journeys, but his commitment to those relationships doesn't stop there. While certainly the athletes on the cross-country and basketball teams and the residents of Hummel Dorm know how deeply Mr. Lee cares for them, so do many other students who cross his path in other ways. For instance, last year, senior Lucy Peacock started her day with an early breakfast in the dining hall with a group who dubbed themselves the Breakfast Club. Lucy recalls that several days a week, Mr. Lee would join them, just because. Lucy said, "He always knew how to make sure each student at the table had the best day ever. Unfortunately, when the pandemic hit, everything about life changed, but Mr. Lee's loving and positive attitude did not. He made an effort to continue our Breakfast Club virtually. Weekly FaceTime breakfasts with Mr. Lee made life in quarantine better, and I'm forever grateful for him and the fact that he genuinely cares for each and every student at EHS. Mr. Lee has spent years working to better our community, doing the hard work of helping us be our best selves, and the school be the best version of itself. In recognition for his commitment to Episcopal High School, the class of 2021 dedicates the 119th volume of the Vespers yearbook to Mr. Jonathan Lee."
So the stream seems to have stopped. We're still recording though, so we're hopefully going to be able to make sure that we get all of that out to people, and so the end here too. But I'm glad that that Ms. Bingham has been here recording, which is awesome. You got all of that, yes, ma'am? Excellent, good. So we'll make sure everybody sees that. Before I give you all a little blessing and we sing our closing hymn, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to somebody who's been really important in this space, and that's Chris Kim. Chris, could you come up here, please? I've said it to some of you individually. I've said it to Chris himself. I don't think that we could have gotten through this year without Chris in this role. He is truly an example of what a servant leader is, someone who is able to put others at the center when they're the person who's up front. And as you can see, even today, he's doing a little acolyting, he's doing a little music, he's doing a little whatever, and that's really Chris. He's there when you need him. And so, Chris, I got you a Episcopal prayer book as well as a hymnal all together, and it's got your beautiful name on the front of it. And I just want to say thank you. Why isn't it on Are We Rejoicing? Because the last time you sing that song will be at Baccalaureate. It'll be when that you are at that doorstep of processing out of here and being on your way rejoicing. But we're going to sing For the Splendor of Creation. This is the song that McLean mentioned in her chapel talk, and I'm really glad that we're going to get to sing it here together. But before we do that, a blessing. My friends, may God give you the grace never to sell yourself short. The grace to risk something big for something very good. The grace to know that this world is too big, but for each of you telling the truth, and too small for anything but your love. And the blessing of God, our Creator, our Redeemer, our Sustainer, be among each of you from this night forevermore. Amen. All right, let's sing together. Do you want to say something? Oh, Ms. English, why don't you pop up there? Tell us what's going on.
Great. It's a little bit rainy out, so we're going to actually bebop inside and stay where you are. We were trying to make a last-minute call, but it just looks like it's not cooperating. So, seniors, you're going to head towards where the chapel is, if you're in the A range. And you're just going to start lining up along the wall, If you're at the end of the alphabet, you can head back to like where Rev Jones is. But you're going to stay on that side of the chapel, okay? So if you guys can start to migrate in that area, your grade deans have your alphabetical order.